Hey everybody, good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Margaret Pinard. Welcome to my channel. I'm here live. I was just writing out some notes and then realized, oh, it was almost time to go. And then Jeremy was like, am I early? So I really knew I should start. So welcome everybody. Shannon is here. Jeremy is here. Shannon, we just did our unboxing of Authortuber Secret Santa, and I didn't go into detail, but today I've got one of my little tea samplers from Jessica's box. It's called Positivity from bohemianpeddler.com. That's the name of the tea merchant that is right here in Madras, Oregon, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to have an herbal tea in just a minute. Thanks to Jessica. Thanks to Authortuber Secret Santa. Thanks to Shannon. So just a little shout out there. But today we get Jeremy Fee in the audience because Dallas is snowed in. Interesting. We're going to be doing a wrap up. So I get to be a lot more rambly than I did yesterday in the unboxing video. So welcome. Feel free to ask any questions as we go. I have 7 books to report out on in January, I guess. I did cover some, but not in depth. I think I was just reporting on current reads. So wrap up time and happy Imbolc. That's my other little greeting to you all today. Imbolc is a pagan New Year celebration to celebrate when the sheep get big with lambs, and they're going to have little lamb babies, and they're going to be giving milk again. So if you were starving and it was the end of winter and you were just holding on, you would actually have sheep's milk and sheep's cheese to make and like food to tide you over. So it's coming back of the light, and we're definitely going to celebrate that in case you're snowed in wherever you are. It wasn't a joke. I was actually holding out hope because I know it's terrible if you lose power there. So yeah, sorry if it's too soon. Hey. Jocelyn Carter, howdy. And Angela Spears, hello, happy Imbolc. Thank you. I have a question of the day today, which is, what was the last indie published book you read? I have one on my list of 7 for January, so we will get to that one first because it's part of the Black Authortuber readathon. You can still sign up. You can sign up anytime through the month. It just involves reading a book by a Black Authortuber. So I'll just keep plugging it all month. So you're just going to hear from me periodically. Hi, Jim. Welcome. Good evening. We are just starting off. We are just starting off talking about the books that I've read recently in January. And I'm going to start with the Not Fabled Passages. That's actually my book. Thank you, Jim. The indie book that I read was Willed to a Dom, and I didn't make overlays for this. That's what I was going to do, and I took notes instead and made my tea. Sorry. I will be doing standalone reviews or buddy read discussions about all the books that I read for the readathon, but I just thought I'd include it as like an update so that every Wednesday wrap up in February has a Black Authortuber book to celebrate. Shannon also put her name on this one, so she has also read this, and we're going to be discussing it on Friday, the 10th of February. There we go. Shannon's got the name all spelled out for me. So I would classify this as light BDSM romance. And so you got it in the title. A dom is someone who is a dominant sort of identified sexual identity person. It's a novella, so it's pretty short. It's part of a series of 3 novellas that she's put in sort of the same universe with the same characters. And it's Black romance. So that was fun to dive into, just like I did last year with Christina Jones's books as well. And in case you don't know, I looked it up because I had forgotten what it means. BDSM, when I say light BDSM, it stands for bondage, discipline, sadism, masochism. So there's a lot says Merriam-Webster. There is a lot under that umbrella, but this book that I read does not get into anything like really hardcore. It just describes certain scenes where like sexy things are happening, and it goes into a little bit about the philosophy or the appeal of BDSM sort of sex stuff. So it was interesting to learn about. There was lots of emotional explanation. There was a very female gaze type approach to the romance. And like all romances, I would say it's characteristically improbable, like any inheritance plot in romance must be, because, you know, someone's inherited a bunch of money, but they have to do a thing and they have to get married. Like, yeah, it's improbable. That's fine. It's romance land. We're not looking for realistic. So that said, I would say it's all about safety within this sort of world and discovery, like self-discovery and expression. And so it was really, really nice. I liked it. I would compare it to the only other book that I've read that has any of these themes, which is Jenna Gordon's Desert Sway, which I read back in October. And I've put the video link in the description if anyone is interested in like just dipping their toes in, like short stories, novellas, finding out a little about what it's about. This was a great side sampler, if you will. And so if you want to hear more, tune in. I will be hosting Shannon on my channel to talk about Will to a Dom by Deidre Ann Anderson, who is a lovely Authortuber. So this is Shannon's answer to the question of the day, the last indie published book you read. Let's see what else we've got to answer here. Jeremy recently read Dog Meat by Priscilla Bettis, and it's phenomenal. Ooh. Jeremy, if you're a moderator, do you have a link? You're not. You are now. Yeah, go ahead, and if you have like a buy link, because that's an interesting title. It doesn't give away much. In the Fast and Furious movies, Vin Diesel plays a character named Dom. I wonder if that was helping the plot and characterization as much as it could. It's giving. It's giving a lot. Anita, hello, welcome. The last indie book I finished was The Alchemy of Sorrow. I am reading quite a few. Yes. And I think I've heard you make this recommendation before and you liked it and it sounded really, really good. I can almost see the cover as well. So it might be on my Storygraph list with your tag attached to it already. So yes. And then Jim says last indie published book, Generative AI Art by Oliver Theobald. Is it a nonfiction about the state of AI art? Interesting. And that's the review for the book. Well, I didn't even go into a synopsis or the story, so we can definitely talk more about the characters and the things we liked about it. Those are just my 3 high points, so to encourage someone. The book is really, really good. Alchemy of Sorrow, yes. Oh, and Jeremy's got us a link. That is a long bleep link, but thank you. Oh, I hate Amazon links. They're so long and unwieldy. Okay. But that's a lot of good indie book rec. So I have an awesome audience. Thank you, everybody. The rest of my books, the other 6, are not indie books, but they are otherwise on my list of like diverse reading that I'm trying to sort of balance each month. So if you can see, the only one, and these are my notes. Oh, these are my notes. The only one that I have an X next to was research, but I'm okay with that because I'm editing right now. I'm almost finished. And I was supposed to be finished in January, but that's fine. And so when I'm editing in a book, all my research is going to like consistency and background and additional historical research. So I don't want to be reading a whole nother book. I need to go like pick things out with a needle rather than like comb with a big, I don't know, tractor or combine or whatever the metaphor would be. But indie, that would be Deidre's book. BIPOC, you'll find out it's Deidre, Morgan, and RF. Audio would be Jacqueline and Morgan. Ebook would be Deidre. Owned would be, well, probably more than one. That I don't know which one I counted. That's sort of a wibbly wobbly category. Nonfiction, that would be the 2 memoirs. So Jacqueline, Morgan, and Sue. and then a reread. So let's dive into those. Reread isn't a diversification category. It's just a interesting tag that I represented in my statistics video. So I figured I would tag when it happens. We can start with that one because that's a great series that I recommend to lots of people. Laurie R. King. This was Locked Rooms. It's something like the 6th-ish in the series. Laurie R. King is a California author who writes about Holmes and Russell. So this is Sherlock Holmes marrying someone 40 years younger, Mary Russell, and they go off and solve crimes together. And they're pretty fabulous and very funny and very good action and suspense themes. So I love the series. This is a good one. I mean, they're all solidly 4-star or more. So yes. Yes. Suggestions, right? Nonfiction about AI art. Oh, interesting. Must be a very recent book then, right? Very cool, Jim. Yep. So that was my reread, and they go by quickly. They're mass market paperbacks. They're dollar bin, bought at Books for America, which is a charity. We love to see it. The next one, Jim will be happy to note, I have managed to finish The Poppy War. So this is by R.F. Kuang, and everyone on BookTube has read it already. It's the first of a very celebrated trilogy. It's probably 5 years old. It is about a girl who's growing up and leaves her background of poverty and insignificance in the rural hinterlands to go to a fancy, very select school in the capital and train to be a soldier and learn about her role as a soldier and how she wants to help save her country, let's say. And there are supernatural elements. There's a lot of scenes that I really liked because they were basically playing with ethical ideas, with historical precedents, and sort of asking the question of the reader, what do you believe? And so I highlighted a few of those that were really could have been discussion launch questions. Were really neat. The action was great. The characterization was great. The humor was great. The violence was high. And I'm curious about the second one, but I don't need to pick it up right away. The book ended with a very launch into the second book type ending, not a cliffhanger, but satisfying and makes you want to pick up the second one. But I sort of resist that because I'm a Taurus, because I'm stubborn. But yeah, great writing, very propelling through the plot, through a lot of lore and world building and setup. So yeah, I really like this. It makes me very excited to, whenever I find a copy that's not astronomically expensive, pick up Babel. So that is the next BookTube darling that is haunting my steps. So there we go. The next book. So I have these are my physical books that I'm going through first, and then we'll get to the ebook and audio, or audio, I guess. Let's see. Rebecca Kuang has a great Twitter account too. It's neat to hear her thoughts about things, including publishing and cover art. Ooh, has she weighed in about the AI thing? I know several authors have, and they're in lawsuits and stuff, but yes. And if you're a subscriber to Jeremy and you watch his videos, you know that I think you're a debate coach of her at one point, and so you always leave this disclaimer. You're like, her books are great, but I know her personally. That would sway you or our opinion, which is kind of funny. But yeah, Jim says very intense action scenes. Yes, Yellowface sounds interesting. R.F. Kuang's book due out in May. So how does she write so fast? Dang. Babel is only just out, and it's hallooed to the rooftops. I just can't. These are all epic books. How do you get something that epic out and then just turn around and write something else? I can't do that. Okay, so we're 3 books down. Number 4, I've got Thistlefoot by GennaRose Nethercott. And this is one that I pointed to another video for, not on my channel, but I heard about this through A Mighty Blaze. There's a show called The Thoughtful Bro, and GennaRose was on The Thoughtful Bro show. And this book has so much in it that is unique to it. So let's see. It's a great interview. So check out the video link below if you're curious, if this whets your appetite. It's about a house on chicken feet. So obviously it's got some magical realism elements. The magical realism is sort of a sprouting out of power based on historical trauma. So like think Jewish history, think Russian pogroms, and think kind of like not the Name of the Wind. What's the library? The Dead Library one. It's the Spanish Civil War, and like weird supernatural things happen because so much violence is happening. I think I'm remembering that correctly. It's kind of like that feeling. And so we are introduced to this brother and sister pair and how they're dealing with their intergenerational trauma without knowing what it's from. And we get to know more about it as we go along, and we get to know more characters who are very illuminating. And then also the history, because the house also has a POV, which is really cool. So Thistlefoot is the name of the house and the one that starts off the action. And I was really, really into this book. I'd say about 55% of the way through, it got a lot heavier. And I was like, oh, we're gear shifting. Okay. And there was a little bit of suspended feeling when we were being carried from like smart aleck comments of the brother-sister tension and, you know, having one goal, two, understanding the background of the premise and understanding what the real goal would be and who the villain really was. The villain, really, really cool. So if you're into villains and sort of supernatural horror, but not like in your face gory horror, although there's horrific things in here, she lands it really well too. So definitely recommend. I think I put this on my 5-star recommendations in Bookshop. So I put all the buy links down below because a lot of these are newer books that are still available. So you can get your hot little hands on them. I got this hardcover at the half off Barnes & Noble sale. So lucky me. Okay. What else do we have that I did not get an overlay for you guys for? Oh, maybe I did because I had it earlier. Yellowface is not about Lego people. Thank you, Jeremy. Lego people or The Simpsons. Thank you, Jim. Hi, Eva. Nice to see you. Yellowface, Lego face. I almost said Lego face. Thanks, guys. Yellowface takes on questions of diversity, racism, and cultural appropriation in publishing industry and the permanent erasure of Asian American voices and history by Western white society. That sounds really good. Okay, so less epic historical and more contemporary and publishing as the setting. Wow. Okay. Well, now you've piqued my interest, and now I have to buy her 2 new books. Thanks. Thanks a lot, Jim. Okay, let me see if I do have the overlay for this. I do. Okay, so I'm only missing one. So this is the first book I read this year, my first 2023 read. Wandering in Strange Lands, A Daughter of the Great Migration Reclaims Her Roots by Morgan Jerkins. And I already had a Morgan Jerkins book on my audio library, called Call Baby. But because I'm not super drawn to stories that explicitly feature details of birth, which is funny, seeing as how I'm sort of writing one, sort of shied away from it because I'm sure that's part of the beginning of the story. But this is a memoir, and that will be important in a second. This is Morgan Jerkins' memoir, and she's young. She's younger than I am, like, I don't know, early 30s maybe, late 20s maybe. And she's already written like 3 books. So pretty amazing. And she's writing a memoir. It's very delineated. Like a memoir, usually you think, oh, the whole scope of my life. But no, both memoirs that I read in January were not about the whole scope of the person's life. Morgan Jerkins is specifically talking about finding her roots or researching her roots in a way that is much more, much different from the shows that you see about ancestry and roots and like uncovering who's related to whom and what relationship happened when on TV that you might have seen, that my parents liked to watch, for example. She went to places where she knew there was a high level of African American local culture and cultural capital and records and highly specific culture to explore. So she starts out in the low country of Carolinas and finds people she's related to. Same thing happens in New Orleans. Same thing happens in Oklahoma. And so she's sort of like exploring these sort of peripheral identities to hers, which is the Guli Gucci. I just blanked on the name. There's a title that is the low country, like rice paddies on the East Coast that I think is Galagichi. And they're sort of marginalized or very small, very not well-known communities outside of their locality that she explores, that she's known something about, but hasn't known how it relates to her because there's so much mystery about her own parentage and legacy. So that was really interesting to find out. She talks to tour guides, she talks to record keepers, she talks to Indigenous rights activists, and like the line between Indigenous parentage and legacy versus African American, and how it may be very interwoven, but for certain reasons it's been chopped apart. That was new to me, almost all of it. That was the Oklahoma part. The New Orleans part, I appreciated that she defined the word Creole for how she was going to use it, because I've read some fiction books about New Orleans in the 19th century, and Creole means many different things to different populations at different times. And so she specified, this is the definition I'm taking because this is the population that I'm going to be talking with. And I was like, okay, this makes sense. And I'm not like confused about what race she's talking about or what privileges they had. She's very good about giving context to the reader. And then the last one is California, and she talks about much more recent history, the Great Migration, and she just brings in so many historical movements, emigrations, fights, like stuff that's usually covered up. And so I loved this. It was more personal, obviously, than The Warmth of Other Suns, which is mostly about the Great Migration. And she just writes really well, and so lit up the stories that she was investigating. Yeah, and it was very personally told and honestly and openly and transparently told in a way that I could hear that it was meant for an African American audience, but it was not derisive to or scornful of a white audience that wanted to read it as well. So I didn't feel weird about it. So I would recommend this 5-star read, American history that anyone could be interested in and benefit from knowing. So that was a good start to 2023 as a 5-star read. Yay! And I think I have 2 more. Okay, 2 more. Let me see if I have Well-Garnished Mind. I do not. Okay, so since I just talked about the memoir, I'll talk about the other memoir to compare and then finish with the garden book. Yellow Faces Due Out in May. Thank you. As someone from Louisiana, words like Creole and Cajun can mean different things to different people. Yes, and it was very confusing reading Barbara Neely and the time frame that she writes historical fiction. But Morgan Jerkins sorts it all out for you. So that was good. Okay, so the other memoir I read was from my favorite author, Jacqueline Winspear. I mean, one of my favorite authors. So Jacqueline Winspear writes Maisie Dobbs and that whole series. She's also written a couple standalones. She does like a journal and a World War I novel. And this is her memoir. And, you know, I was saying it doesn't treat the whole scope of her life. She is much older. She's, I think, in her early 70s and could have written, you know, this is what my life has been about. But what I thought was interesting and was really maybe what her readers would want to read more about is that she dove into all the things that made her need to write the historical mysteries that she does. So instead of talking about what she studied in college or how she started and got her agent or how she decided on where to live as an adult, she really delves into her parents' history growing up, her grandparents' history in World War I and World War II, how the families were separated, how there was like traumas enacted on almost everyone in the picture, how that bonded them in some ways, and then how she grew up, but like from her earliest memory, where she starts out by saying, I know no one thinks I can remember this, but there's no one around to have witnessed it and told me about it. So how else could I remember this? And it's a memory from her pram, from her little stroller, when she was like 6 months old or something like that. So that was really cool. She talks about her early childhood, what her parents modeled and told her as stories from their lives, how that affected her, accidents she had growing up. And the coolest, I mean, to me as a reader of her mysteries, the coolest thing is that she explains how and why growing up in like 1950, it was more of an Edwardian childhood, like 1905, than it was a 50s childhood because she wasn't in London. She was in the back country lanes in a farm cabin, basically, that was not well insulated, that did not have indoor plumbing, that barely had an outhouse. Part of the time, her parents, before they had her, were in like a little gypsy caravan. They explain the relationship with the gypsies of that area and why they use that word. And it's a whole like little corner of history that you don't often hear about. I feel like there's a little overlap with the Orchard book, England's Eden, I think, that I read and loved so much because she talks about working early to earn money for things and like picking the hops. That's not what she calls them. There's a whole different terminology for like hop picking in Kent, and apple picking and all this kind of things. Growing up, what they valued, how they taught her their values, and then eventually how things like started to get tense and how she wanted to do one thing and, you know, there were obstacles in her path. So, but then it sort of cuts out when she gets to, I don't know, like age 13, 14, and sort of skips forward to when her parents have died. I mean, that's woven in, but she talks about her parents' deaths and the things that they were talking about as they were getting close to hospice level and everything. It was really, really good. I'm rating it the same. It's like 4.75. Just because there were things like I might have wanted to be included, but she obviously did not want to go into like the publishing side. So that remains a mystery. But yeah, two vastly different memoirs, Morgan Jerkins, Jacqueline Winspear, both amazing to read for very different places in the world and experiences and approaches, and like both highly, highly recommend if you're in the market for a memoir. So there you go. Brown Girl Reading. Hey, welcome to the show. All right, so there's only one more book. That is going to be a nature science-y nonfiction book. It's called The Well-Gardened Mind. And you'll see I put the video from the Ritual of Readings channel. She's the one who recommended it, and I saved it as a tag on my Storygraph. And I can't remember what exactly the impression was I got from Alexandra when I watched her channel, but her channel is always like soothing. There's like water falling, there's piano playing. It's like very mindful and present, and she made me want to read the book. So I picked it up from the library, and Sue Stuart-Smith is the person who wrote the book. She is a medical professional, but also a big gardener. And so she wrote this book, The Well-Gardened Mind, about brains and gardening and neuroscience and psychology and the sort of feedback loops, both what we've hypothesized in terms of evolving with farming and gardening, or although gardening is earlier than farming, she says, but also how it's therapeutic in its practices and applications today. She talks about prisons with gardens. She talks about old folks' homes with gardens. She talks about rejuvenating, I guess you would call it blighted urban areas. There's one, Todmorden. I don't know. Jim, if you've heard of this one, remind me. That's called Incredible Edible. And basically all the industry left this place in Yorkshire, and they were doing really badly. Like, stuff was falling apart. Their health clinics were like degraded, and everyone moved out if they could, right? So you were left with people who had addictions and couldn't get their needs met. And these people started planting things that were actually useful and could be harvested for food and medicine, and sort of like grew from there. And there's been a little renaissance of wild foraging. I think it's Todmorden, but correct me if I'm wrong. But that was one of the examples that stood out. My attention on this one waxed and waned. It's a lot of science, and sometimes that's interesting, but then it's also a lot of examples, and sometimes that's less interesting depending on, you know, how soon you get the point. And she keeps talking. So I give this one 4 stars. Very interesting. Lots of interesting concepts that I took notes on and wanted to look up more on the sort of neuroscience side. But coming off my science and nature reads of the end of 2022, this was a good like follow-on, I think. So yeah, if you're into any of those things, I would recommend that book. Which Morgan Jerkins, her memoir. This is the one I just talked about before you came in. So you can rewind and rewatch on the replay if you want to hear me waxing rhapsodic about it. I thought it was amazing. First read, 5-star read of the year. Todmorden is near Hebden Bridge. Is that in Yorkshire as well? I think so. Richard, you missed the Jackie Winspear, like Kent connection, which might be closer to you, but thank you for being raptacular. Love the one. Yeah. Yeah. She's really good. So now I'm excited to read her fiction as well. But that is my 7 reads, including my 1 Black Authortuber readathon book. I will have more of those reads next week. I have in train an Alexandra Warren book, which is another Black romance to report back on. I am 60% finished with How the Word is Passed by Clint Smith III, and that is really, really good. Unfortunately, he doesn't have a YouTube channel, so I can't call him a Black Authortuber, but it's a really impressive book, and I'm really enjoying listening to it. I'm also in the middle of Hild, which is historical fiction about St. Hildegard of Bingen. So that might get wrapped up next Wednesday for the second Wednesday wrap-up. Okay, so now we're in the Q&A period, apparently. Feel free to ask about any of these books. The title of Jacqueline's memoir. Thank you, Angela. I did not mention this. Jacqueline Winspear's memoir is titled This Time Next Year We'll Be Laughing. I think it came out in 2017. So the link for that in Bookshop is down below in the description. Todmorden. Is that how you're supposed to say it? And Hebden Bridge, some see as a lesbian capital of England. Maybe the incredible edible spread across to Hebden Bridge. Who knows? Yes, Wandering in Strange Lands, I really enjoyed. So that is my first wrap up. It's kind of a packed week because we had the Secret Santa yesterday and the wrap up today. And on Friday, I have my first Friday of the month. So, first Friday productivity. So, if you're in the market for a productivity sprint, come join me Friday morning. Otherwise, go forth and buy your Black Authortuber books or get them from the library and read away and report back. Pop them in the spreadsheet. The link for the BAT readathon, the short link, is down in the description, so you can always pop your own reads on there and tell us what you're reading, and we'd love to get to know more great books. So that is it for me today. Thanks for watching, everybody, or catching us on the rewatch and leaving a comment. Very much appreciated. And, ooh, Shannon has a self-publishing tips and tricks video coming out on the hour with a copywriter who gives tips for authors. Copywriter. Nice. All right, well, that will be it for us today. Maybe we'll see you later in SD Houston's live chat with self-publishing tips and tricks. But otherwise, have a great rest of your week and happy reading.